Any questions?
When I first read on, let's see, number 10, the pickup bed, we're talking about a pickup bed on a pickup truck, right? Somebody not pick, that's what I think, who picked up a bed? I'll move to pay the bills.
Second.
And that is with the addition, am I correct?
Number 28,
Yeah.
is that what the?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. A motion by Ward, seconded by Gaz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Administrative report, Bud?
The town association has been busy putting the heat on the legislature to increase the amount that is budgeted for road repair in the state. And there's a number of senators that are proposing a bill. I don't think the bill has a number. It goes to joint finance now to budget $133.6 million for local roads. That means counties would get $1 million for each county, that's 72 million. And the rest of the state would get $1,000 per mile. So the town in that scenario would get right around $100,000 for their roads in the town. And this would be available to June 30th of 2023. They're gonna go through the same criteria, the way it sounds, as we do on the TRIP funding, as far as this is very preliminary, so it's not anything, but it sounds like it'll be similar to the procedure we go through for that. So I sent a couple of emails down and called down today to voice our support. It sounds like they're getting a lot of calls on it, so it's, the email from the town association says that the cities and the villages are opposing it already because they're not getting any of the money. On May 23rd, there was a pre-construction conference on the project of Highway 42. It goes from Gibraltar Road in Gibraltar to Country Walk in Sister Bay. There will be no work on the road from June 28th to August 3rd. Completion is, on the whole project, is October 31st. And they're also suspending work on festival weekends. There'll be a long weekend in there for those activities. The field office is located behind the NWTC Learning Center in Sister Bay. There will be no traffic on any town roads for Liberty Grove, any hall roads or anything like that. For the Valley Motel, the phase 2 is being scheduled, and the question of asbestos has come up. So there will be an investigation to see what might be there as far as asbestos. That's all in the works. They said we could tear it down before the phase 2 is done, as long as we don't disturb any areas that they want to investigate. But that's all gonna depend now on this asbestos deal, when they can get that done. All done.
Okay, any questions anybody has? All right, going on to public input, this is the opportunity to address the board on any given subject and also on the agendas. We'll take any general comments anybody wishes to make, please.
Nancy Kurtz, 12025 Cedar Shore Road, Ellison Bay. I just wanted to inquire, actually, first of all, thank you. I don't know if the town or the state is responsible, but I think it's you, for putting up the crosswalk little sign that's in the middle of the road there. It's looks like a sturdier one this year than they've had in the past, and hopefully, so far it has not been hit, so that's a good thing. But I did want to ask, the crosswalk itself is very faded, and I don't know, again, if that's a state issue, since it's a state highway, or if the town could paint the stripes. With the season approaching, I mean, if you're driving, approaching and not expecting it,
We'll
it
have to do it.
needs to be repainted. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And we're waiting for the speed signs to be installed as well, so. Any other general comments? Okay, anybody on any of the agendized items, please? If not, we'll move on to the fire board report.
No, I was going to say, we had a fire board meeting, but Chief Heck brought us up to speed on the development with the county. The plans are moving ahead, although from a practical point of view, finding an organization that would service us from a private point of view would be a lot harder than it might suggest. But we also suggested that Administrator Ken Pavich come and speak to the board, just so that we get a better idea, so that we could continue to deliberate with as much information as we can.
Okay, you, maybe for,
Please.
Want me to add? So I'll add a
Please.
couple things. I've extended an invitation to Mr. Paddock to come to the meeting, our next meeting. He is currently booked into another meeting, but he is going to try to get there. So it remains to be seen whether or not he will be able to attend that meeting. Is the resolution in the packet, or is that a separate agenda item?
It's in here.
Agenda 15.
Okay, so we'll wait on that.
okay. You want to comment on 15 then,
I can now or then, whenever it's easier for you.
when we get to it then?
Sure, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, since this testimony is so critical, could you please have Chris step up to the microphone? and speak?
Sure, sure. Okay, going on then, consider ordinance 319, regulating certain activities in town parks. Kathy?
So, this is a matter of name changes. We came up with the name Mariner Park at Gills Rock. It's not quite carved in stone, but in terms of having a name for making reference to that particular piece of property. So, that's what we're looking at here is making those changes in this ordinance. Correct? And adding Fitzgerald Park, which we did not
Yep.
have on the fees and references to those public properties.
It also adds renting out a couple of parks, if they choose to put up tents,
Tents.
which
On the
we
rate
don't
sheet?
have now.
On that rate sheet?
Well, in this ordinance,
Yeah.
we never had that option of renting out a park if they want to put up a tent. We never had that, so.
So that's being added. And the rate sheet does not appear within the ordinance.
The rate, yeah, I was gonna say, the rate sheet's not exactly part of the ordinance.
No.
The
They
rate
But
sheet was
the
in the
references to the names of the properties is what the ordinance,
The rates are referenced, but it is not part of.
correct?
Right, but where's the tent referenced in the ordinance?
Number, section. Section. Rental of the following parks is
Section
permitted by written permission. We never did that before.
Fees to rent these parks applies and are listed in town's current fee schedule. That's on the section 7
Oh, I
on
see
the
that.
second back
So the
page.
language is existing, it just refers to the fee schedule. then.
Yes.
I get it, okay. I'll move that we adopt resolution 3-19,
Ordinance.
ordinance.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Consider as resolution 619, report for the utility district, the ECMAR. I believe everybody recalls when Mike Skell was here. This is kind of the follow-up. We said we'd do this, so I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 619, approving the ECMAR for Liberty Grove Utility District.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Going on, consider approval of ordinance 419 regarding placement of objects on town property or within road right-of-way. Bud?
This came about as a consideration on part of the town crew, which happens every year, of people putting snow in their driveway or on the highway, out of their driveways. What happens is they push the snow out there, it sits there, people drive over it, and it gets like concrete. They come along with the plow and might not even know it's there because it snowed, and you hit that at a, it doesn't have to be very fast, and it'll basically almost knock the plow off the truck. So, we need something with some teeth in it and some, enforcement, consequences when this happens. We've done, phone calls and sent letters and, but it still seems to happen, so maybe we can get a little more aggressive in making people aware of, this practice, which is not good. We have talked about putting in the notice in the tax bills. I don't know if we've done that so far. Maybe not, because we usually don't think about it when we're doing tax bills until later on when the snow piles on the roads. So hopefully this will address it, and at least we've got some backing in our ordinance. It's also against the state law statute, so it's, now we've got it in black and white.
And I think that'd be a good idea to either notify, you know, snow removal companies.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And residents somehow that, you know, if you have over and over repeaters on this in some cases, but to make it at least public somehow, but I think to notify the, you know, the commercial plowers, because they're the ones that probably are the worst offenders.
That's a good point.
And would the penalty be imposed on that, or?
Well, actually, it's,
Property owner.
the property owner who's responsible, so, they're the ones that'll actually get penalized, and they'll have to talk to their plow driver who plows their driveway to straighten them out on the deal.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. In other words, though, it could be less contentious if it were just a little clearer that the ultimate responsibility is with the property owner. Then he or she can tell their maintenance person ahead of time if need be too. And, because it seems like there's gonna be that back and forth between, well, I wasn't here and so-and-so plowed my road and he's done it for 20 years and he's always done that and now I'm responsible and he should be, or she. So, I mean, it wouldn't be much to add, in section 6, for example. Language to the effect that the responsibility lies with the property owner.
There would be B,
Yeah.
section 6B.
6B. Yeah, and that's all it would be, perhaps, just to say the liability, the responsibility for any penalty resides with the property owner.
Responsibility for violations
Uh-huh.
would rest with the property
Property
owner.
owner.
Mhm.
Penalty or violation?
Pardon?
Which phrase? Responsibility for any
Violation,
violation
Yeah, we're
resides
in
with
the-
the property owner?
right.
We should formally make that into a motion to add 2.
I'll move that we put section B to, subsection B to section 6 under penalties, as per the language of,
I have the language of responsibility for any violation resides with the property owner.
Okay?
Yes.
Any discussion?
Maybe it should say something, any notices or citations shall be sent to the property owner. So they know that if they're found in violation, that the violation notice or whatever document is sent out will go to the property owner.
add a
That could be
clause.
C.
Yeah, and just say, and any notice of violation will be
Sent to the property.
sent, sent to the property owner.
Can I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Now I can continue.
Okay, I'll make a motion to add to section 6.
I have a motion and a second already. I have Lou with a motion and Kathy with a second.
I thought that was B.
That was B.
That's for B.
Okay, yeah, so then can you vote?
Vote on B.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, all in favor of adding B to section 6, indicate by saying aye. Opposed? That motion carries. And I'll make a motion to add C to section 6, that any notices and citations will be sent to the property owner.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of that motion, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then I'll move to approve ordinance 419 as modified, changed.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, consider approval of Resolution 719, Municipal Emergency Medical Services. Yes, please.
Good evening, and thanks for considering this resolution today. We put it forth to the fire board at our last meeting, and the fire board made a motion and approved to pass it on to the two municipalities, the town of Liberty Grove and the village of Sister Bay. The resolution, or the draft of the resolution, I don't know, I don't have your version in front of me, it may have been changed slightly, but essentially what it does, and what the fire chiefs, when we put it together, what it does is what we've asked is that the town pass the resolution, and what the resolution does is it supports that EMS in Door County remain not only operationally, but administratively under the control of local government. Be that the county, be that, if we do something different, that it stays under local government control, county, town, village, or some combination thereof. What we're asking is that, so there's a couple different ways that it could have gone, or could go yet, right? It could stay under the county as it is, it could come out and be part of some other fire district, EMS district, or there has been some talk of administratively it stays under county control, but operationally runs under a private. So what this is asking is that no matter what, it essentially eliminates the private providers from the discussion, is what this would support. And the fire chiefs feel very strongly that there is not a lot to be gained, short of possibly a little bit of money, by moving it under a private. I will tell you that the county went out for requests for qualifications. They are due back in July. I know that there was one private provider that came in and evaluated the county, came to all the stations, with the exception of the island, looked at the equipment, looked at the stations, and spent some time with the employees. That private provider was AMR, and they are the largest private EMS provider in the country. They own many different smaller, like Rural Metro. I don't know if anybody's heard of Rural Metro EMS. They do fire and EMS. They own them. They own in excess of 100 fixed wings and 150 rotary wing helicopters. They're a huge company. But they were here, they evaluated. It is unclear whether they're gonna submit an RFQ. If they do, then the process then begins, if the county feels they're qualified, and I think, just based on who they are, they would meet that qualification, then the discussion becomes on an RFP, what is your proposal on how to meet these standards? What the fire chiefs are saying is, that's really not a good place for us to go as a county. I don't know what will happen. We'll have to wait and see. As a taxpayer, as a person that has used the service, as a person that has worked for the service, and as a fire chief of a department that supports that service, and we work hand in hand, and speaking for the other 9 fire departments in the county, we would prefer that it stayed a public entity.
Chief, you had filled the fire board in on repercussions and consequences for the county's budget and so forth. And if you think it's appropriate, otherwise disregard.
No. So I will give you what my impression is, right? Because while I am an employee for the county, I don't speak for the county, and I want to make that clear, right? I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you that the county is very fortunate in that, and I think this is what you're asking about. So for years, fire districts have been, while they are not a taxing entity, they are outside of the levy caps. So when there's levy caps put on, fire districts, and we are not one at this point, run outside the cap. The county, under Dick Burris, probably 10 years ago, when Governor Doyle was the governor and started to put caps on it, I think at that time 2 or 3%, the county was able to go in and get a Me Too law passed, where it said that any EMS provider in Wisconsin that provides EMS service countywide is exempt from the cap. Is this what you're asking about? Mm-hmm. The county got that law passed. What that allowed them to do was move the entire EMS budget out from under the cap. And they were able and have been able to leverage that in their benefit, and they've done a very good job of it. Is the county EMS budget is, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's, let's say 10% for easy math. It's more than that of the entire budget. So what they did is they looked at all of the supporting county departments that support EMS, so finance, human resources, dispatch, corporation counsel, human resources, all of that, and they moved 10% of each of those department budgets into the EMS budget and got it out from under the cap. So there are some significant consequences to the county if they lose control, or if the EMS system is unplugged from the county and moved over and brought under a countywide EMS district managed by the local municipalities. And to make that clear, at no point do the fire chiefs want to manage this. They believe it needs to stay under municipal control. They believe it needs to be under local control, your level control, not county control. But it needs to be municipally maintained and responsible to municipal boards and ultimately the taxpayer, as opposed to some other entity. So the county stands to have some financial, they would have to make some financial adjustments. I think it's well within their capability to do that. If this were to go a different public route, and that's why I brought up the administrative control by the county, operational control by a local government, is then they can continue to keep that budget separate. So I don't know if that answers your questions.
Absolutely, yes, thank you, Chief.
Okay. And I'll take any questions. So the resolution is just simply saying that we would like EMS to be operationally and administratively controlled by some public entity.
Okay, any questions anybody has? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve Town of Liberty Grove Resolution 719 in support of maintaining EMS as a municipal service.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Gaz. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
there's any reason for me to stay, I'm happy to stay, otherwise I didn't know what else I was then.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Consider recommendation from Parks and Property for towers on town property.
Miss number 16.
16.
Where did I jump? I'm sorry. Consider approval of contract with McMahon Engineering. Questions? Bud, you kind of want to walk through this a little bit? You want this?
Hang on.
I got it.
Essentially, the first page there goes through the items that the treatment plant is looking at as far as upgrades. There's $2.4 million of replacement of systems, and then new systems for disinfection, et cetera, is 1 million, and building additions are 1.6 million. The replacement type projects are 2.4 to 3.4 million, which should be ideally replaced from a replacement fund or funded, but as we understand it, their replacement fund is low and not going to handle much of that. So basically, the repairs that are being suggested fall in the $5 to $6 million range. On page 2, we have the scope of services proposed by McMahon, which is pretty inclusive of what is at the plant now, including their findings, I believe, on their investigation. And they take us up to a certain point of bidding for construction phase services or permitting. It's up to us, I guess, how much of this we would want to do and go through. Page 3 is their budget estimate of current evaluation, any alternatives, permitting, consultation with the DNR, doing a report on the current and future needs, reviewing the 2013 wastewater agreement, which we're working on kind of now with the village and the mediation sessions, and then looking at alternatives and strategy. We've got a basic bottom line figure of $18,000 for time and expense of going through the practices and procedures as outlined. We're into it now somewhat, I guess, with the investigation of the plant by McMahon, which has been completed, and are using their resources and staff during the further mediation session. And then the last few pages are the charges and the nuts and bolts of the agreement as far as legalities and liability coverage.
From what I understand then, this was done for the right reason, which is to make sure that if and when the town contributed its money toward the wastewater treatment plant facility upgrade, that we were doing it according to what our engineer said should be done, as opposed to Robert E. Lee's estimate of what should be done by the village, correct?
I guess it would be based on what the report, the findings are by our engineers after their investigation. So I guess if they would come back and say, yeah, everything's great, they should go ahead, then that's where we're there, stand there, and if not, then we have to go to Plan B to see what if there's alternatives. And we haven't agreed to anything in writing yet with the village, so, which the agreement, 2013 agreement calls for.
And I certainly wouldn't want to deprive McMahon of any services, payment of any services that they've undertaken up to this point. But it would seem to me that in light of where we might be going in mediation, without going any further into that, in terms of detail, that we just hold off, because this might become moot, depending on how that all works out.
Yes, we could come to a point where we say, well, we don't need all this stuff. We don't want to get locked into something that they think they're going to do for us, and then we say no, and they say, yeah, but you signed this agreement, so there we sit. So, based on what went on in the mediation Friday and maybe in upcoming, we should maybe clarify that with Gary, and so he knows what we're thinking here.
Yeah. I'd move that we table this until we speak to Gary.
I did ask him, just after we got this, if he needed this signed before they went into the plant to look at it, and he said, no, there was no rush. So, I think we're safe doing that.
Okay, we have a motion to table until we speak to Gary. I'm assuming I'm clarifying our position that we may not need all these services dependent upon the mediation process.
Right.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ward. Discussion.
No,
Oop,
table.
what tabled, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, going on. I do that all the time.
No, you've been good. You've been good.
Thank you. All right, consider recommendation from the Highway Committee regarding Homestead Drive.
No, no.
17.
I'm sorry, I got marked things all the way down the line here.
17.
Consider recommendation Parks and Properties for towers on town property.
This goes back to the establishment of criteria, you know, what we need to think about, how we need to think about using town property for tower placement. So originally, there was a listing of 5 criteria, and coming out of Parks and Properties, we amended one, the first one that said, would the placement of a tower on a property, would it benefit most of the residents? And we added, as determined by the tech committee and all their special know-how. So that was a little amendment on that one. And then we struck the number 4, which was consideration to rather the properties that would be serviced. If they're heavily wooded, would customers need to remove trees in order for that service to be realized? And we felt that was a matter for private property owners and not something that the town needed to oversee.
Okay. Any questions anybody has?
Would this then take the form of, not a resolution, but how would this be noticed and by future boards and committees?
Well, I'm assuming that Parks and Properties has adopted this, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, it's not a resolution?
No,
Or an ordinance, right?
it's just the
Procedural.
procedural that they'll function under. And obviously, any expenditure of those towers on those properties has to finalize, okay, comes back to the board.
Right. No, all I'm concerned about is how, 10 years from now, will this be, how will this come to light for somebody who's interested in putting a tower on town property? In other words, could it be like, sort of like an appendix to an ordinance of some sort? Somehow just as, not an ordinance, but just as sort of a note to say that this thing exists, so that it doesn't get lost?
Oh, I see what, okay.
Because it doesn't have a,
Don't we have a tower, we have a tower
We have a
ordinance.
tower ordinance, we
Could
could,
it be added to that ordinance?
why not?
And then that ordinance would become amended to reflect these items.
That makes sense.
We could do that and then bring that back for.
Bring that back, okay,
Mhm.
but I
Right.
think it would be
makes sense.
as a recommendation under the ordinance, right? Or-
Well, why don't we redo it, amend it to include this and see
Yeah.
what we can come up
Yeah.
with?
Yeah, that'd put it into the history books, so you.
Exactly.
Right, and the word recommendation I think has been used all along for
Mhm.
these, and that word is still included. So, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with Lou that, how do you know this won't get lost, or with changeover, it's easy to forget.
Okay, it's coming back then. All right, now, 18, consider recommendation of the Highway Committee regarding Homestead Drive. This falls to Bud again, I believe.
I don't recall what the recommendation was
Oh.
myself.
This does not fall to Bud.
The highway committee
Well, I think
discussed,
the highway committee was, wasn't the snow, all this went to the snowmobile club, was my recollection that they were gonna work with the homeowners. Did we get something?
There was no decision made on this, was
That's,
there?
I didn't recall a decision
they
being
wanted to
made.
lower the speed limit to 45 on that
Yeah.
road.
That was the recommendation? Okay.
And then, once you have a posted speed limit on a road, then the snowmobile club can also,
Yeah.
make that be, a rule for them. But if you don't have a speed limit on there, the snowmobile club can't post a speed limit sign.
Right, so because there's no signs right now, people can travel 55. So they want it to be posted and
Ask
then
them if they
possibly
could
lower
Pass
it.
it and go straight out. Can I ask Dennis a question on this?
Sure.
Is it possible to bypass Homestead and go straight down Mink River Road to the area that, where Homestead comes out and Ben heads to?
I don't think it's really safe to travel around that blind corner. The ditches are real steep. I would ask the town to cut the ditch line back further so we can get off the road, to make it safe. We have kids that are 12 years old on a snowmobile. I don't want an accident to happen. Yes, we could go that way.
We had talked about that here, but never really got too
I
far
look
on
at
it.
it from a safety standpoint.
Okay.
Homestead I didn't realize it was a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit in Homestead until I stopped in the office, thinking it was a 25 or whatever it might be.
Yeah, there's no signs up there, so
I just wasn't aware of that.
that means 55.
Unposted was 55.
It'd be kind of hard to go 55 on that road.
You can't. So,
All we'd have to do is put the speed board up there, and people would be doing it.
Well. So the question before us is to reduce the speed limit to 25 miles an hour
To 45.
to 45. Well, that's right, we're kind of handcuffed to go below 45. Well, I'll make a motion to reduce the speed limit on Homestead Drive to 45 miles an hour.
Second.
We'll have to draw up an ordinance for that then.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You want to explain why we can't go to 25?
Well, we can go lower if there's 6 driveways within 1,000 feet. And I don't know if that qualifies on that. We haven't measured that one. We could check that out and look
well.
to see between now and the next time we work on the ordinance, but I don't know.
Could I make a comment?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
recommend it be 25 or less. I mean, it's, the corners in that road, though, we let you travel through there safely
No.
at 45 miles an hour.
Okay, we'll look at
Yeah,
the.
we'll look at it.
We'll look at the driveway spacing, and if it qualifies, come back and see if,
How many driveways in 1,000 feet? 6?
6.
What's the downside if we just go ahead and make it 25? My understanding is then the county wouldn't enforce it. And that's the worst that could happen. I mean, we wouldn't get fined or spanked or anything if we just went ahead and did 25-mile-an-hour sign.
They don't run a radar trap out there.
Exactly.
You can do an advisory if you want to, of
Nobody listens to that.
25, with the yellow signs, that's no problem, without studying anything on it.
I just think it does not make sense to have a visible 45. The inference there is that then you
Go
can do
45,
45.
Sure.
Well, why don't we have them take a look at it? It could be a stretch of getting 6 driveways within 1,000 feet. It's gonna be close, but take that approach first, and then if that is true, we could go to 25. Otherwise, do the advisory, 25, or 25.
It just seems like such a foolish rule to link it to driveways when the obvious would be if the road is not fit for that kind of speed, it's a safety issue. It just doesn't make sense to say, oh, you can only do it if you have so many driveways.
Okay,
We'll investigate it.
it'll be coming back then. All right,
Is there a vote on that motion?
That's what I asked too.
Well, maybe not.
was there a second on the motion?
I
I got a
second.
Oh,
second.
Lou
but I
did
don't
second.
remember
Okay, we have
having
a
vote.
motion.
We voted.
We did.
We're not sure about the vote, though.
We'll go back to the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You got it? Okay, consider, or discussion and possible action regarding Garrett Bay boat launch.
That's mine. It could be in the committee level, it's been bouncing back and forth, but because the town was put on notice last meeting from one of our residents as to the pretty obvious hazards that the boat launch is posing in terms of especially the gaps in the large boulders there and stuff. The crew and Bud have done a really nice job trying to clean that up, and they've done a very nice job in doing that. The ice shoves obviously really did, it looked like Omaha Beach on D-Day after the shoves there, and it's much more presentable, but it still poses, I think, a problem. So, one of the things that I would again, it could be at the committee level, but it's here now, that somehow the town just does a temporary fix, trying to level some of those gaps in the rock and the broken concrete there as best they can. And when I say temporary, Bud and Jay both have been on top of the matter, and Jay pointed out, for example, that concrete is 35 years old, and that's why it's in the condition it is right now anyway, and that we authorize the administrator to get the cost for pouring the slab, which is what Jay and Bud recommend, so that we can think about putting it in the 2020 budget that way, as a capital improvement project, a slab that would replace and go right into the water there. And at the same time, again, sort of getting a little bit ahead, but Kathy showed me a portable boat launch ramp that having
Pier,
Jacksonport Pier, that we may be able to get a price on as well, again, for consideration for the 2020 budget. I would also ask that the administrator approach Dr. Schaefer, the owner of the property to the east there, about purchasing that strip. He had offered it to the town at a certain price at one point, but maybe he'd be amenable to, well, at least finding out what it would cost if we wanted to buy that.
I haven't contacted them yet.
No. Jay and the crew again did somewhat of a nice job, they did a nice job, I should say, of somewhat removing the brush to the west of the boat launch to give it more of an open park-like. But I would also suggest that we try to do a little bit more that would open it up to more of a, the park is more than that just concrete slab, that it's that beach that goes to the west as well.
Is the property to the east, is that part of the boat, launch ramp discussion? Or is that a different
The
discussion?
property to the east is Dr. Schaefer's
Right.
property.
But that has no effect on the boat launch ramp?
No,
Okay.
the thing that started the whole thing was the fence that was put up, that
Right.
lots of people have objected to the look of the way that fence, but assured me that the DNR said it was okay to put that fence up, but, and anything that could be done about that would be, I think, a benefit to everybody who objects to the feel of that, that chain and private sign that the town put up, but that's another story right now.
I think what we'll do is, based on those comments, is we'll talk to maybe Death Star Marine and get an idea of what we can do for concrete to get in there so the ice can't get under it and push it out. That's gonna be the big item right there. So we'll get them down there in the near future and get an idea of what can be done, and maybe we can get a ballpark number for looking at it.
Okay. Any other comments anybody has? Okay, on to number 20. Status of Ellison Bay Harbor in relation to elevated water levels.
We have been concerned about the condition of the piers, and in relation to the high water, I met down there with, Doug and I met down there with Death Star Marine staff, and they've been working next door at Bayview Resort, raising their piers up. At one point, we thought, well, we'll have to close the harbor because the way it is now, the boats can't, those uprights won't take boats banging against them. They're not anchored well enough on the bottom. Curtis came over and looked at it, and he said that we can raise it up to the same level, the piers up to the same level as the sidewalk. And he said, whether you open the harbor or not this summer, Bayview next door is closed for the summer. They're not putting any boats in there. He says you're gonna have to get them out of the water anyway, because if they freeze in the ice, the water stays up, they freeze in the ice will take them out in the spring. So what they can do is they can raise them up, and then 3 piers, get those done right away. And then the long pier between us and Heritage Harbor, or Bayview Resort to the south, that'll be easier to raise up because it's on those pipes that they can just raise it up and refasten it. And also the one on the, as you're going out on the left side of the launch ramp, that's a little higher now, but that should come out of the water too, and that can be done in the fall. Those will be okay for the summer. So,
They're suggesting to take all of them out this fall?
take
All the
them,
piers?
take them out, you say?
Yeah.
We haven't talked about
Oh, I
that
thought
yet.
that's what you said, that,
Getting them out of the water, higher than,
oh, okay, just,
elevating them out of the water. So that would be the recommendation here, is to get those 3 piers elevated to the same level as the sidewalk, so we can keep the harbor open this summer, and then next fall, work on the longer ones to get them out before they freeze in.
Do we have a cost estimate?
I don't know of a cost estimate.
Have a what?
Cost estimate?
Yeah, the ballpark number is $300 a pier for the 3-finger piers. And on the long one,
Well, if we don't raise them, the ice is gonna get them anyway. It'll be a lot more than $300 a pier.
Right.
and then we can't use them
No.
this summer.
So you said, Bud, that Bayview is not allowing
No.
anybody on their piers? huh?
No, they got floating piers over there, and those floating piers now are actually higher than the sidewalk or the dock going out. So they'd be, they could end up on top of the, and I think Norland might be the same thing. I think Norland might be shut down also.
I'm trying to remember if there were any boats in there. Are there boats in there now? I didn't remember
Where?
seeing Ed Norland.
No, I don't think so.
Yes,
Oh.
yes, there are. There's one building on it.
Okay, I'll make a motion to authorize the raising of the, now we're gonna raise the 3, right?
Immediately, right.
Immediately, okay. I'll make a motion to raise the 3 piers immediately and to come back in the fall, and it's the launch ramp pier, right, for the fall?
And the one between the town and Bayview.
Oh, okay, and the one between the town and Bayview, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed?
Could I make a request?
Sure.
On a related matter, but it's not agendized, but I would like to see it on a future agenda with regard to the elevated water levels. Several people have approached me with concern about the lowest tier of stairs at Port-de-Mort being damaged by an ice shove.
Yeah.
And Lou and I met with Todd Brybe from Wisconsin Coastal Management earlier this week, and I mentioned that to him, and he said, yeah, you should have a coastal engineer look at that. That's definitely at risk where the water levels are and where the pier itself is. So if we could get that on an agenda, doesn't have to be necessarily, actually, Dr. Shabika is coming up to speak to GODC or to lecture in July, and Tom and I had planned to take him to Port-de-Mort Stairway anyway, and he just happens to be a coastal engineer. So I'm hoping to get some thoughts from him, but so that we could just talk about it before the budgeting session and before winter.
You want it at the next board meeting or first board meeting in July?
Probably, I would probably prefer to see it on a board agenda after Charlie has a chance to look at it and
Oh,
just
okay.
make some informal comments
When is
about
he-
it.
When is he due?
He's coming July 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Let's put it on the first August meeting.
That'd be great.
Got it, Stace?
Yep, first meeting in August.
Okay, going on then to 21. Consider removal of structures at 11976 State Highway 42. Bud?
I talked to the person from Bay Lake who was coordinating the Phase 2 investigation, and in relation to the break-in that we had down at the valet,
A break-in.
telling her that we need to get this project moving because it's just an attractive nuisance down there, and I'm afraid that this might happen again. So she said we could go ahead and remove it before they do the phase two, as long as we don't disturb the area that they want to do the investigation in. The subject of asbestos came up, asking if we had done an asbestos investigation. I said no. She said that Ayers Associates could weave that into their phase two, so she's doing that, and I said, well, can you speed it up so they can get in there, do that, and then we can get the thing down as soon as possible. So that's what's on the horizon. And also in the recent Towns newsletter, they talk about bidding out projects. And in there, it says bidding out construction, et cetera, projects, but it doesn't say anything about demolition. So I contacted the Town Association, and their opinion, and the League of Municipalities concurs with them that demolition is not required to be bid out. So what we can do is just ask a couple of companies that we know do that type of work and get some numbers and see where it goes from there.
Regarding the phase two, have we gotten any response yet, or any idea about, there was grant money there for that? Is that,
It's in the works.
Okay.
The EPA has approved it. And as far as any paperwork, other applications, it's in the hands basically of Bay Lake. And they're supposed to be forwarding to us whatever we need to keep it rolling.
okay.
So
When did the break-in occur? And what,
Well,
what
why?
was,
It's-
that's a better question, I guess. Was something stolen or just vandalized or?
Yeah,
What
they-
we know.
they got into a couple of the motel rooms,
Oh,
busted some of the windows going into, I stopped a week ago Sunday and looked in there, and well, here, a couple of doors were open that hadn't been open and then I went over to the house, the door had been kicked in the house, because that was locked. They went in the bedroom, remember that bottle of Asti Spumante that was there?
yes.
That's not there
Oh,
anymore.
yeah. Oh,
And the dresser is tipped over, and there's a pull-down stairway going to the attic, that was pulled down. So they busted a bunch of stuff. I called the sheriff's department, and when I was reporting it, she asked if anything had been stolen. And I'm thinking, geez, I hope so. But the deputy came down and he said he'd put on extra patrols, suggested we put up trail cams if we wanted to keep an eye on it, and
honestly.
that's where it sits.
Well, does the village have any vulnerability or, any exposure insurance-wise? I mean, that house is unsafe to walk in. If someone gets hurt by trespassing,
Yeah, our insurance company knows all about it, yeah,
If you put up no trespassing signs, you're covered.
okay.
which we've got up there.
Which,
Yeah.
yeah, we do.
Amazing.
So we
Yeah, it'd
need
be great to
to
expedite this.
authorize the administrator to get some, I guess, bids on removing the structures, just so everybody understands. If any project comes in over 25,000, that's what triggers, you have to, bid it out. And basically what Bud has said, the town and the association says, no, you don't have to, so.
Good.
The probate lady did get an estimate from Fitzgerald Construction on it. His bid was for complete removal and then filling in the holes again with the material, but if we have material we could fill it in with probably, and it should be less than what he had originally bid.
Yeah, it'd be great to get it moving ahead as fast as possible
Yeah.
to eliminate the blight.
And there was, Door County Economic Development, Jim got back and asked if the foundation for the motel was stable. All we know is that there's water in there, but we don't, because I gather what they're thinking is if they can use the foundation for any future project, it would, save some cost, I suppose, so. So that may be something to mention too, if you get bids that, not to remove the foundation if they don't have to, so. Okay, I'll make a motion to authorize the administrator to request cost expenses to remove those structures.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Consider IT report regarding communication service to town residents. I've done 3 things in a row correctly. Who does this fall to? Kathy?
Communication services, is this coming out of last night?
Yes, but
Oh.
I think
Oh,
they just
okay.
decided they were gonna discuss it further before they bring it back. to the
Oh,
board.
yeah, because I wasn't expecting this to come up here today. So this is following a discussion at Tech Committee last night involving residents, let's see, as I recall, all the way from last night, in particular, seasonal residents that have come back and had difficulty getting their phone service started back up again. One thing we don't know is, did they have, was their service on vacation? And now the company's just pulling out of the delivering service to people business? That's one thing we don't know, but there have been, there was a posting on the Visitor Bureau website. Someone was asking for, what can I do, that this had happened. They couldn't get their phone service reestablished. And then other people have known that people have had this issue. But there's a lot of unknowns about it, like, have you been paying that vacation rate all along, and now that it's time to get back going?
Anything that the IT committee would suggest that the town could do about this?
Well, we did talk about trying to come up with a set of questions like, did you have a vacation service? I'm not sure what the town can do about that. It was a matter of, trying to gather information just to, highlight the issue. There was concern expressed in terms of phone and also internet access. People that have life alert type devices. And if they can't get their phone service reestablished, what effect would that have? Those were actually questions we didn't totally have answers for. But we thought, as and if calls come into the town about this, we know we've had a few. Can we get some more information and try to figure out how widespread this problem might be? Not sure what the town can do about it, other than raise the issue and have maybe bad press.
It seems to me that that falls under the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission for the state.
That did come up, that, the idea, how can you just say, no, we're not gonna hook you up, even though that seems to
Well,
be what's
maybe the
happening.
thing to do at this point in time is have the office contact the Public Service Commission and say, we have some people who have come back and can't get their service reinstated. What can they do? Besides pay their bill, obviously, but that may be part of the issue.
Mhm, mhm.
We can do that.
Yeah, why don't you try that and see what happens? And I'm getting the impression that the telephone people are backing out of doing landlines now.
Well,
They're losing so many customers to the cell phones that,
I called and pretended I was a person who needed new service, and I was told I could get it.